So Kwam and Comfort Emerson have been pardoned following the intervention of the Minister of Aviation. And in this video, we are discussing the question, what says the law on passenger conduct on board the plane, or even as you're about to enter the plane? Are there rules? Are there regulations? Are there provisions of the law governing, all of these? So I take you through the laws one by one. First is the Federal Government of Nigeria's official gazettes, which makes provision for aviation security regulations 2023. This regulation was gazetted on the 15th day of September 2023 in Lagos State, Nigeria. So it's still a very new set of regulations governing the conduct of everything in the aviation sector. And the article that really relates to the conduct of passengers is the one we're discussing here. So we go straight to Article 17 of the regulation. It talks about unruly passenger. Unruly passenger. And what does it say? It says any passenger who becomes unruly at the airport terminal or on board an aircraft commits an offense. Right? It goes on to say the word unruly as used in this section refers to, but is not limited to, the following actions. 1. Smoking on board an aircraft. 2. Use of mobile phones and other communication electronic gadgets on board an aircraft without the approval of the pilots. 3. Fighting or other disorderly conduct on board the plane. 4. Any conduct or action constituting nuisance to other passengers. 5. Disobedience of lawful instructions issued by the aircraft commander. The aircraft commander here is the pilot or flight crew or cabin attendants, check-in staff, and other security screening staff. 6. Any conduct that endangers or is likely to endanger the safety of the flight. 6. Tampering with smoke detectors and other aircraft equipment. If you do any of these acts, you are against the provisions of the law, and it is described as unruly behavior by the passenger. It goes on to say, where any passenger becomes unruly on board an aircraft or at the terminal building, the aircraft commander or airport authority shall take necessary measures, including restraints, where necessary, to 1. To protect the safety of the aircrafts, terminal building, or of persons or property in the aircraft or in the terminal building. 2. To maintain good order and discipline on board the plane or at the terminal building. 3. To enable him deliver such person to competent authorities. So you can see the provisions of the law here, the provisions of the regulation talking about the conduct of passengers on board the plane. Now, the next law that talks about the conduct of passengers is the Civil Aviation Act 2022. Okay? In section 85 of that act, it says, whoever while on board an aircraft interferes with a crew member and such interference impedes the performance of the crew member commits an offense. And if the person is found guilty, the person is sentenced to not for a period of not less than 2 months imprisonment and for a fine of 200,000 or both. So you can be convicted and sent to pay 200,000 as fine and also go to jail for 2 months, or you can be asked to pay fine or go to jail. 2. Any person who assaults, intimidates, or threatens any flight crew, notes, any flight crew member or flight attendant, including any steward or stewardess of such aircraft, or engages in an unruly behavior on board such aircraft, commits an offense and is liable upon conviction to a fine of 200 or imprisonment for 2 years or both. None is good, right? 3. Any person who against instruction of the pilot in command or flight crew members or cabin crew, uses or operates any equipment or device, including mobile phone, that may interfere with the frequency, the aircraft radio frequency, that person, if found guilty, is liable to pay 200,000 naira fine, or go for imprisonment for 2 months, or go for both, fine and imprisonment. 4. The pilot in command or any aircraft. The pilot in command of any aircraft shall take such reasonable measures as may be necessary to ensure the safety of the aircraft and the passengers on board whenever he is faced with an unruly passenger behavior, and may request the assistance of any person on board the flights in that regard. So you've seen what the law says should be done and what the law says should not be done. And I think this is necessary in view of what has happened in the last 1.5 weeks in Nigeria, and in view of the fact that, when you just go on board, you go by the rules. It's just sometimes 45 minutes flight or 1 hour flight, or if you're going international, you just obey what they're saying and land at your destination safely without having to run into trouble. There is also the question about the responsibilities of the cabin crew before and after each flight. What are they expected to do? Or do they not have responsibilities at all? They have responsibilities, one of which is to provide safety to the passengers throughout the period of the flight. Safety, which is very important. They are not to endanger the life of passengers, right? Number 2, duty to act with courtesy to the passengers. You don't talk to passengers anyhow. Be polite. That's one of the responsibilities that the law expects of you. You don't shout at a passenger. You don't tell a passenger to shut up. Everything you want to tell the passenger can be done politely, right? So just as the passenger is expected to respect the crew members and the pilot, okay? The crew member, the pilot, and every other person that is in charge of the aircraft also have a responsibility to talk politely to the persons that they are carrying as passengers. 3, duty to also obey aviation regulations and laws. The regulations that we saw before getting to this point and the laws are equally applicable to all crew members. So a crew member cannot behave anyhow. A crew member is also subject to the provisions of the law and subject to the provisions of the regulations. Regulations are made pursuant to the provisions of the law, and they are binding in law. I do hope you have learned one or two. Many thanks. When you go to the airport, this is a typical airport with the plans. So when you go to the airport to board one of these, just, play by the rules. When you go to Rome, you behave like the Romans. When you go to the airport, behave in line with the provisions of the law and the regulations, and arrive at your destination safely. I wish you a safe journey in your next flight. Many thanks.